Boris Ursus, yes, the hidden legendary lord, inadvertently, accidentally, slightly leaked earlier. Probably a lot of you guys didn't hear about that, though. Yes, Kislev, sorry. Cathay does not have a hidden legendary lord, guys. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. A lot of people have been speculating that Shenzhou is somehow unlockable. She is not. You guys would have already seen her if she was. Boris is absolutely unlockable and usable in multiplayer, and he is quite strong. So he is the best bear lord in terms of being a combatant. Anti-large, armor piercing with magic damage gives him a pretty good trade against most demons. 60 melee defense, 55 melee attack with his item, the Bala like Virari here, which I probably just butchered the pronunciation of, but anyway, oh no, that's from this guy here, the Patriarch, that's right. So we've opened here with the Patriarch plus Boris. We've also got a light war sled against Khorne. This is Rubber Duck of War's Khorne, and Rubber Duck of War's Khorne is quite scary, I must say. We got some Kossars here, War Bear Riders. He's coming in with the anti-large AP of Minotaurs, along with the Herald of Khorne to support. Lots of Warriors of Khorne with halberds, very strong in this matchup. Flesh Hounds and Warhounds for the opening force. So, Boris, again, I think if you're going to need to fight a big scary demon, Boris is definitely your go-to guy. Again, anti-large AP, 65 charge, 105 charge bonus, also has stand your ground, and can cause terror while this ability is active. Gives an additional 25% weapon and armor piercing, rampage, and terror. Of course, he's also got, this shard blade here is another item. A very small area of effect, direct damage, only 2 times use, but does give minus 45% speed and a little bit of a kind of, AoE damage effect, which is always nice. We're going to go forward with the light war sleds and try and disrupt as much as possible. Just keep this these halberds tied up so I can get my units up and onto the objective. But here comes the big engagement. We're going to pop all of the buffs and all of the prayer buffs too from the Patriarch. So you can see these bear cav here, 91 attack, 61 defense. Just absolutely ridiculous. The Minotaurs come in here and get completely shredded. Granted, once they get the melee attack buff of the Herald, they do punch back pretty well. The Locust of Wrath, you can see my War Bear Riders also took some pretty substantial damage there, so probably a pretty cost-effective engagement at the end of the day for the Minotaurs, but my War Bears would have routed probably just like that if they hadn't got that by our blood passive, which is currently making them unbreakable, of course. The sleds continuing to hold back, not necessarily meant to fight against Flesh Hounds per se, but one thing you'll note is just like War Wagons, the dudes in the back will continue to fire while they're fighting in melee, which gives them kind of an additional hidden DPS, which makes them surprisingly good at fighting cavalry units. But we did manage to also snipe the Herald here, so quite a bit of value down for Rubber Duck of War initially, but not like a back-breaking amount. It's the nice thing about the Herald is he's not ridiculously expensive. It's not like losing a demon like a big, like a Scarborough or Exalted Bloodthirster or something where it's like almost impossible to recover from. He's quite a bit cheaper. Skull Cannon's coming forward. Skull Cannon's a really nice anti-cavalry tool. Right now, I think he's trying to shoot the War Sleds, which is probably the right call. The Halberds, you might think, are a counter for the War Sleds, and they are to a degree, but also not really. Like, especially if I can fix them in the front with the anvil of, like, the Kossars even, and hammer with the sleds, or even just cycle charge with the sleds by themselves, should be pretty effective. Get some more little buffs here. Got the Patriarch's buffs, just in general, quite strong. He also has a little area of effect replenishment that actually might make him arguably better than Constantine in certain situations. If you don't need the fire damage and you're not as worried about him getting sniped, he's not as tanky as Constantine, but he does have that nice little AoE heal. Boris coming in, speaking of tanking, stand your ground. Again, the Taurs battle him, combining those two together along with the healing and the vigor refresh, just keeping everyone at tip-top fighting shape. Honestly, extremely strong area of effect abilities, and these bear cav are just grinding on top of Khorne halberds, which again is eventually not going to go well for them, but at least for the time being, they are able to hold out pretty decently while the sleds kind of circle around. They finish off the doggos there. We've also got some winged hussars up and around the flank to charge into the rear with Boris's Fury of Urson active, causing terror. We're able to terror route a few of these halberds. Super awesome value and really excellent use of sort of the Winged Lancers plus that ability combined. Speaking of Winged Lancers, we managed to capture objective number 1. That being said, Rubber Duck of War is holding me off this objective number 2 right now with all of these halberd infantry. So we've got some more armored Kossars moving onto the objective just to try and tank a little bit better than the regular Kossars. Since they were not able to hold out super well here, I mean, to be expected, but also got some armored Kossars, great weapons. One interesting thing to note here as I kind of keep the action in the foreground, armored Kossars versus armored Kossars great weapons, you don't lose too much melee defense. Yeah, it's hard to tell because of all the abilities kind of modifying the armored Kossars right now, but you really don't lose too much in the way of melee defense, and I think you do gain some charge bonus too, I want to say. Yeah, 4 extra charge bonus, which isn't a ton, but it does matter with the armor piercing damage and the pistols. Zargar do trade off quite a bit more melee defense, going for the great swords than Kossars going for the great weapons. In my opinion, the Kossars with great weapons are probably going to be more applicable, but given that you're limited to 12 ranged units in your armies in multiplayer with unit caps activated, and armored Kossars do count as ranged units, you can see these armored Kossars great weapons with their pistols out, getting a little precursor shooting attack. Oh yeah. Kislev has pistols, which does make me happy. It has a pistolier enjoyer. More Winged Lancers coming over as well. As the bear sleds pull away. Been able to come in and just crush these bloodletters that the Lancers that had captured this far objective just swept up and around this cliff. Managed to come in and drop a little rear charge here. So the fact that we're keeping Rubber Duck of War kind of bottled up in his deployment is pretty nice, although I did blunder in the Patriarch there, and he is going to go down, which is unfortunate, but I think I've got all 3 heals out of him already, which is nice. Bringing in the caster again in the kind of mid to late phase. I guess not even late phase. It's still early phase in terms of points, but mid phase in terms of the battle, just to bring out Crystal Sanctuary and Frostblades, be able to pop a bunch of expensive spells just back to back. I thought about bringing the Heart of Winter as well, just for big anti-infantry damage. In fact, yeah, I did not in this one. You could definitely, though, against, like, if your opponent had managed to develop a strong force of halberds. Thankfully, I've been able to keep his halberds pretty well cleared out between the sleds, Boris, and the cavalry and everything. Speaking of which, we've got some Griffin Legion coming out to deal with these Flesh Hounds, try and protect this objective. Rubber Duck of War's got more Flesh Hounds moving in to try and engage, so 2v1 here. I'm not expecting the Griffin Legion to win this, but they should get a really nice charge initially onto this first unit and be able to crush them pretty quickly. Yeah, you can see massive charge damage on those Flesh Hounds. The other unit, though, kind of gets in and sandwiches. A good portion of the unit kind of envelops them. So these models right here are going to end up taking a lot of damage. You can see them already getting chewed down. I'm going to use Boris's mobility to come try and reinforce here. We've got more light war sleds also coming over to provide a little bit of extra punch. Again, even though the Flesh Hounds don't count as infantry like Warhounds do, Warhounds and Furies both counting as infantry is important, though, to note for the war sleds. They can actually counter them. Flesh Hounds do not, but even still, just coming around, getting that charge bonus. 38 charge bonus isn't huge, but Flesh Hounds have pretty low defense anyway, so the sort of splash attacks and so forth there will be decent enough. As mentioned in previous videos, war sleds are pretty good at fighting cavalry, and I would definitely consider Flesh Hounds cavalry. Kossars now holding, yeah, just preparing to meet their doom against these Warriors of Khorne as they move in. Armored Kossars, great weapons, will actually be okay at fighting, but like, considering that the Warriors of Khorne are only 100 cost more, look at how much better their stats are than the Armored Kossars. I mean, granted, the Kossars are paying for a little bit for that missile attack, but anyway, Boris versus reinforcing the war sleds in the Griffin Legion now. More Winged Lancers coming in with him to screen out and fleece these Furies, lance the Hounds, and drive them back. And we are able to do that pretty effectively. Again, stand your ground, Fury of Urson being popped. I love that stand your ground. The ability to use that plus the prayer buffs. You know, I was saying Constantine's probably going to be the most meta pick, in quotation, in most matchups, and I still think that's probably the case, but I do think also situationally combining Boris with the Patriarch can be quite strong, even if you blunder the Patriarch. But Crystal Sanctuary and Frostblades both on these Armored Kossars, so they've got lots of extra melee attack, extra weapon strength, up to 45 weapon damage with 31 AP, and the damage resistance as well. They can't move, of course, though, so once the Blood Shrine pulls away there, I mean, lose all that magic uptime, but that's fine. We did at least force the Blood Shrine to pull away, and now the Frost Maiden can chase here. Bear Sled's just getting a brutal charge on those Warriors of Khorne, and there's not too many Halberd Warriors here right now, just a handful, so the sleds can definitely continue to generate some really nice value. I think I even have one heavy sled in reserve, possibly, that I'm going to be bringing in momentarily, but Boris sweeping back up and around. We've got more Minotaurs coming back in to try and deal with the war sleds. Minotaurs definitely with only 56 speed. Really, I thought Minotaurs were faster for some reason. I guess the war sleds can outrun them, in particular with Frostbite. Not that I actually have anything with Frostbite, thinking about it. Probably would want to try and control the movements of Khorne. Just, again, trying to get the caster to be as cheap as possible so that I can bring her as a reserve. Here comes Boris, though, again with his cavalry. Boris as, like, the ultimate cavalry commander, I'm too down for. His armor just looks amazing as well. Like, his bear's armor, ugh. 10 out of 10, for sure. For the Kislev aesthetic. And the Minotaurs are enough of a threat that I'm going to just pull back the sleds and kind of screen with the Winged Lances and the Griffin Legion. They had Stand Your Ground active momentarily, but now Boris is going to get Frost Blades. He already has magic attacks, but just up to 74 attack, like 600 plus weapon strength. Just absolutely shrekking this Blood Shrine. Going to absolutely shrek some Minotaurs, too. We're going to hit him with the Crystal Sanctuary. Since it appears he is quite well surrounded. Ooh, just tears apart a Minotaur right there. Yes. Oh, another Minotaur just straight to the face. Bear claw to the head. Man, that is quite the way to go, even for a Minotaur. That Crystal Sanctuary, super, super clutch. That 66 damage resistance basically just meant that he probably would have got torn apart by the Minotaurs there, no question. But Crystal Sanctuary, it's a spell that I had kind of discounted at first, but I definitely see the value now, especially in Domination, of being able to just hold. Like, just not take nearly as much damage and just be able to hold for a pretty good amount of uptime. Let's see if I can remind myself of how much uptime that spell actually has. I guess maybe not. Can't get the card of the caster up here right now because the sleds are in the way. So let's just get close and watch the chaos unfold. Or rather, the order unfold into chaos. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense either. You know what I mean. Forces of order push back the forces of chaos. Although, I say push back, I don't know actually how well this fight is going. I mean, I guess we are routing the warriors there. Looks like the Furies are also not doing amazing. So, okay, yeah, this is going pretty decently. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to tell in these very hectic engagements. But Warhounds getting over here, getting on those Kossars. Of course, Warhounds, again, counting as infantry, means they're not subject to the anti-large bonus of the Kossars. Can get in and trade, but Kossars becoming unbreakable will allow them to hold. Not that it would have mattered. I probably could have lost that objective number 1 at this point, and as long as I hold the center, I should be able to do just fine. So, yeah, Boris seems quite strong. Granted, I didn't have to fight a legit greater demon here, like a Scarborough or an Exalted. But, I mean, just against the Minotaurs and even against the Herald, we were able to shred the Herald super fast. So, I can imagine that Boris with the Bear Cav, you know, all supporting, would be able to also tear apart a Greater Demon pretty quickly as well. Yeah, good stuff, though. Kislev, definitely my favorite faction so far in Game 3 to be using in multiplayer. They're in many ways like Empire, but they're better in a few key ways. They don't have as much variety, obviously, right now, but the Bear Sleds, man, the War Sleds are just so strong for their cost. Only 950. These guys legit could be 1,000, and I think they'd still be fine. Maybe 1050. I don't want to say too much right now because I don't want them to get nerfed immediately upon release, but let's be honest, they are quite ridiculously strong, especially, you know, given the synergy with, you know, different like charge bonus buffs and different things. I did bring the Patriarch out late again to try and get some heals before the end of the game, but didn't really get any more off. But definitely if I would have microed him better, I think I could have sustained those Bear Calves a little bit longer, maybe got some heals on the Chariots too, but even still, Boris himself, the kit that I brought him here is less than 2,000, so that is quite cost effective. Bear Calves also pay for themselves trading against the Minotaurs, which you might think would be just a horrible trade 1v1. and it kind of was, but the Minotaurs did end up paying for themselves, I think, on the first go-around. The second time, I don't think they got nearly as much value. But Warriors of Khorne with Halberds, I do think you want to max in this matchup, and Robert of War and I were kind of talking about a little bit after the fact, just agreeing that, yes, like, I think you'd want to just max Flesh Hounds and Halberds here, rather than trying to go for the Minotaurs. Minotaurs low armor means that they're kind of vulnerable to, like, just low-tier Kossar shooting, and this sort of alpha nuke squad will out-nuke this nuke squad, right? So it's better to just spread the value around and try and max Halberds, even on your starting force, I would think. And then, yeah, bring in some more Flesh Hounds. The Flesh Hounds very good here. They trade well, even head-to-head in Winged Lancers. It's like, okay, it's not ideal, but, you know, they definitely can do quite well running around at the back line of Kislev, too. Yeah, the Skull Cannon's a tool that I like quite a bit here as well. You really want to be shooting Cavalry with it, though, because it can kill Cavalry models like any cannon can quite efficiently. You want to shoot Cavalry models with it and then move in to fight infantry on the point after you've used the ammunition. But definitely the Warriors of Khorne quite solid here if you can keep them fighting. Yeah, Flesh Hounds, like I mentioned, pretty decent. In my reinforcements, if we take a look, not too much value on the Frost Maiden, didn't do a whole lot. And I did end up bringing in the heavy sled, but really, you don't need the heavy war sleds. The only reason I brought it in this particular build is because I already maxed for light war sleds between my starting and reinforcements, but I didn't even end up bringing in these other two light sleds, so probably could have cut this and just brought more stuff, to be honest. Yeah, the Winged Lancers, all things considered, trade pretty decently here. With the support of Boris in particular, they trade a lot better into the Flesh Hounds. Like, that melee defense buff certainly helps. Armored Kossars, great weapons. I think you definitely just want to go Armored Kossars, great weapons. I don't think there's a ton of reason to bring the shielded Kossars here. And then, yeah, just some extra cheap bows. Didn't do too much, but there you go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Definitely a fun matchup. I've been having a blast playing Kislev. Like I said, my favorite faction in Game 3 by far, so far. So stay tuned for more. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more Kislev content force-fed to you. Be sure to keep it right here. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.